Tigger Movie. One day, as a cold wind blew through the 100-acre wood, Tigger found himself bouncing along with the last of the autumn leaves. Winter is coming, the wind seemed to whisper. But Tigger wasn't listening. He was too busy, singing as he bounced along. He decided to invite his friends to join him. But Winnie the Pooh and his other friends did hear the wind. It reminded them of all the chores they needed to do before winter. Pooh had to count his honey pots, Piglet had firewood to gather, and Kanga had to clean her house. Poor Tigger. He had to play all by himself. So Tigger continued on his merry way. He didn't even notice when one of his bounces uprooted a large boulder, which started to roll. And landed on Eeyore's house. Crash! Hearing the noise, Eeyore's friends ran over. Rabbit was one of the last to arrive, but he brought along a set of plans for removing the boulder and restoring Eeyore's happy home. All we need is a little, team effort. Rabbit said. But Rabbit's fancy contraption didn't work, until Tigger returned. With just one of his big, famous whoop-de-dooper, loop-de-looper alley-ooper bounces. He managed to bounce away the boulder, and all of his friends, too. Well, now that that's out of the way, said Tigger, pleased with himself, who's up for a little bouncing? Bouncing? Shouted Rabbit. All you think about is bouncing. But that's what Tiggers do best, thought Tigger. With a sigh, he slowly headed back into the forest all by himself. Don't be sad, Tigger, said Roo, hopping to catch up with him. Why don't you go bouncing? That'll cheer ya up. Tigger still drooped. There's no one to bounce with, Roo boy, he said. Well, what about another Tigger? Don't ya have a family somewhere? Roo asked. Tigger's face brightened. A family full of Tiggers. Can you imagine such a thing? Tigger and Roo headed to Owl's house for advice. As Owl talked and talked, Tigger accidentally knocked some pictures off Owl's wall. Roo coughed loudly to distract Owl, while Tigger replaced the pictures. To find one's family, one must first look up one's family tree, Owl advised. My family tree! Tigger exclaimed. Why didn't I think of that? In a flash, Tigger was off again, with Roo bouncing along behind him. My family tree's gotta be the biggest, hugest, most gigantical, stripedy tree in the entire 100-acre woodses, announced Tigger. As they went along, he started shouting up into any tree that he thought might belong to Tiggers. Hello, he called. But only his echo answered him. Heading back to his home, Tigger sighed. Tigger, said Roo, if you taught me your special bounce, I could bounce it with you. But when he tried to bounce in Tigger's house, Roo just crashed into an open closet. All kinds of things fell on him, including a beautiful, shiny, heart-shaped locket. Why, this is the exact family heirloom type thingamabob I was looking for, Tigger exclaimed. It must have a picture of my Tigger family inside. But the locket was empty. Tigger slumped sadly at his desk. How am I supposed to find my family now, he wondered. As Roo thought. He noticed a pen and some paper on Tigger's desk. Why don't you write them a letter, he suggested. Soon Tigger and Roo were popping a letter into Tigger's mailbox. Now we'll wait for my family to answer, Tigger said. Tigger and Roo waited by the mailbox for an answer. Finally, Roo had to go home. I wish I had a big brother like Tigger, Roo told his mother, as she tucked him into bed that night. But, Roo dear, Kanga replied, Tigger is one of our family. And as long as we care for him, he always will be. I still wish I could do something to make him feel better. Roo said with a sigh. That gave Roo an idea. He and his friends could write a letter, pretending to be Tigger's family. When Tigger got the letter the next day, he began to bounce up and down with excitement. Although the letter didn't say so, Tigger was as sure as stripes his family was on its way. Since no one had the heart to tell Tigger they had written the letter, there was only one thing left to do: dress up as Tigger's family. Surprise! They all shouted outside Tigger's door. "Come on in," said Tigger. "There's lots of catching up we have to do." Everyone tried their best to have a good time, but it was no fun fooling Tigger. Then Tigger suggested that they all bounce. He put on some music and the bouncing began. In his excitement, Roo attempted a whoop-de-dooper, loop-de-looper, alley-ooper bounce. But he crashed into a closet and knocked off his mask. Tigger pulled the masks off his other friends. "Now I understand," he said. "It was all a big joke." Tigger sniffed. "Well, that's okay, because out there's a real Tigger family tree full of my real Tigger family. And I'm gonna find it. TTFE. Ta-ta forever." Outside it had begun to snow, but that didn't stop Tigger. He threw the door open and headed out into the freezing cold. Roo felt awful. "He never would have left if it weren't 'cause of me," he said with a sniffle. "We gotta go find him." With Rabbit leading the way, the friends headed out in the wind and snow to look for their friend. Soon it was snowing so hard, they could barely see their paws in front of their face. Meanwhile, Tigger had come across the biggest, hugest, most gigantical, stripedy tree he had ever seen. He bounced up into its branches, thinking, for sure, his family must live there. From far off, Roo spotted him. "Tigger! It's me, Roo," he shouted, racing toward the tree. Tigger couldn't hear Roo, but the rest of the search party did, and they rushed over. Finally, Tigger heard his friends calling. Thinking they were his family members, he bounced down to greet them. "Hey," he said when he recognized them. "What are you guys doing here?" Just then everyone heard a loud rumble. It was an avalanche. Realizing what was happening, Tigger bounced his friends up to safety in the tree. But the avalanche was approaching quickly, and there was no one left to save Tigger. Roo knew what he had to do. Taking a deep breath, he bounced Tigger right up into the tree. "Hooray!" everyone shouted. Tigger was more impressed than anyone else. "Why, that bounce was as good as any old Tigger's," he told Roo proudly. When the snow had settled, Pooh and the others admitted that they had written the letter from Tigger's family. "You mean you fellows are my family?" Tigger asked. "I'm afraid we have nothing better to offer," said Pooh. Tigger smiled. "Well, of course not, Pooh boy," he said. "Because there's nothing better than the best." Safe at home once again, Tigger gave everyone in his family a present: honey for Pooh, firewood for Piglet, and a new family room for Eeyore. But the most special gift, his family locket, he gave to Roo. "Only the bestest for my best little brother," he said. And so it was that Tigger found his family at last. The end.